Right.
Okay.
So, Richard, you made it down to Appledore today. How are you finding it?
Lovely, actually. It's, I'm ashamed to admit it, it is the first time I've been here since 1971. We used to come down here for a lot of family holidays when I was extremely young, I hasten to add. And it was wonderfully nostalgic, just driving down again and along the quay. Things didn't seem to have changed very much. It was, beautiful to see it all
brilliant.
again.
Well, you've brought these wonderful collection of characters with you today. Did you want to tell us a bit about them?
Certainly, yeah. These are some of the characters that Aardman has made famous over the years. He's brought to all of these, I think, to the television screen. Oh no, with one exception. And the very first character is from the very early days of Aardman. This is Morph. He wasn't absolutely the first character that Aardman produced. There was, in fact, a character called Aardman who didn't kind of hang around very long, but gave the company his name. Morph was the first of our sort of enduring properties that we created. Peter Lord and David Sproxton, who founded the company, were fresh out of university, and they were commissioned by the BBC to do some animation, initially for Vision On, which is where Aardman appeared, and then they came up with Morph for a show called Take Heart, which Tony Hart used to present. It was an arts and crafts show, and Morph was a little character made out of plasticine. So here I've got some morph-coloured plasticine, and it was like one of the very early experiments in pure plasticine animation. And Morph used to live on an arts and crafts desk, so as you can see, he's only sort of 5-6 inches high, so he used to have adventures with rulers and rubbers and all the various bits of artist paraphernalia that were there. As time went by, he developed a little friend called Chaz, who looked largely similar, but was made out of a light grey colour plasticine as well. And between the two of them, they used to have a lot of adventures. As time went by, he developed a whole family. He appeared on quite a lot of Tony Hart's shows, and in fact then spun off into his own series, The Amazing Adventures of Morph. And by and large, he's been on BBC children's programmes pretty much for 30 years or more. He's had a little bit of a revival recently, and GQ did a photo shoot with him, so I think there's, as well as being very appealing to children, there's now a whole nostalgia audience who remember them from their own youth as well. So
I think all these collection of characters, I think everyone will pretty much recognise them all. I mean, what's it been like for you, kind of your involvement in the whole?
Great, really. I joined Aardman at the end of 2001, which is when we set up a TV department as separate to our film department. We used to have film and television. In the late 90s, we started making feature films, and Chicken Run was the first of our films. That is such an enormous and all-encompassing process that we found that the kind of the TV side of the work was really getting sidelined because everyone's energies were swallowed up by making feature films. So we formed a separate TV department. So I came on board to look after the scripting for that. And on my very first day there, I was told that one of the TV shows they wanted to develop was for Shaun the Sheep. And I just grinned from ear to ear. And I can't say I kept grinning all the way through the process, but by and large, it's been, a fantastic thing to actually kind of work with characters that you'd seen and loved before, and to actually get the chance to take them a step further, to work with Nick Park and Peter Lord and David Sproxton and the original creators of these characters it's an absolutely fantastic opportunity.
So is that the actual size that they would have
That's
been?
right, yes. Morph's about 5-6 inches, as you can see. Wallace is probably about 9 inches. He's on a slightly larger scale. And you'll see this here, one of the chickens from Chicken Run. Well, you won't recognise this, but this is the innards of one of the chickens from Chicken Run. That, again, gives you an idea of the size of puppet that we're working with. So everything is very much in miniature. And, when you think of Wallace's house and how it looks on the TV and the amount of detail that there is there, and the fact that you can read the spines of the books on the bookshelves and everything like that, there's, a phenomenal team of artists and model makers and set decorators there who just have such love of their craft, and every little detail is absolutely right. But if this chair was in Wallace's living room, it would be all of 6 inches high. So everything's kind of very much miniaturised.
Yeah. So going back to your role a bit, your script development. So what does that involve?
Yes, I started off as a script editor at Aardman, and now I'm called a development executive, and I haven't really worked out what the difference between the two is. I will look at how we can tell stories with our characters that will, last for a TV series. Shaun the Sheep's a very good example of a character who appeared as a one-off character in the third Wallace and Gromit film. And in fact, he had all of 4 minutes screen time in the original film. If you actually edit the scenes that Shaun appeared in and put them sort of back to back, there was only 4 minutes of Shaun the Sheep that existed in those days. So we have the challenge of, how do you then take that character and turn him into a popular long-running series that hopefully can go to as many episodes as something like Tom and Jerry or something like that. So obviously you talk very much to the creators of the character. Nick was involved in the very early stages of the Shaun the Sheep TV series, and you work out what the world needs to be. I mean, Shaun kind of wandered into Wallace's house, didn't really leave at the end of the story, he was still there, we've never quite explained that one. So we thought, well, actually, chances are he's going to live on a farm with a flock of sheep. Well, we do meet the rest of his flock actually in Close Shave as well. So we thought, well, there needs to be a farmer and there needs to be a sheepdog, and these could be the locations and these could be the other characters. So you start mapping out your world, your other characters, you know, how the sets are going to be, so the set designers can start working on those. And then you bring writers into the mix. So I've, you know, worked with a lot of different writers over the years, and you just kind of, it's a bit like blind dating really. You kind of think, well, this writer will probably be a good match for this character and this series. So you bring some writers on board, you get them down for a brainstorm day where we'll all sit around the table and talk about what we could do with the series and so on and so forth. You know, the other characters we're thinking of, and then somebody says, well, what if the farmer's got a cat? And, you know, things develop that way, and what if there's a little baby lamb called Timmy or something like that. And yeah, so I put the writing teams together, and then they'll go away and they'll come up with the basic ideas for stories, and then we'll, you know, allocate the script and the series will be written, and I'll supervise all the writing. I'll also liaise with the directors and the storyboard artists and the producers to make sure that the ideas that the writers come up with are going to be practical in terms of animation, and yeah, just kind of keep an eye on the story point of view, really.
So, I mean, when you're kind of developing a story, how do you kind of, you know, get into the mind from the characters, see where they want to go, you know? Obviously, you're checking that nothing's going on, that you don't...
I think, you know, you have to get a kind of a gut feel for what the character is and what the character would do. Again, Shaun's a very interesting example because, as I say, there was very, very little footage in the original film of Shaun. And most of the time, he's a very passive character. He's just reacting to things that are happening around him, and he's kind of looking around like that. So, like, okay, we want 52 episodes based on this character. You're thinking, well, that's actually quite a challenge. But what was interesting, in the early days, Shaun was an absolute marketing phenomenon. I don't know if you remember, but there were the Shaun the Sheep rucksacks and Shaun the Sheep hot water bottles and all that kind of stuff. So he was a very popular character, and our market research people, our marketing and licensing team, actually conducted some research as to why people like Shaun and, you know, what they thought of Shaun. And everyone would kind of come back with, you know, how they describe Shaun. Everyone said, oh, he's very resourceful, he's very brave, he's adventurous, he's loyal. And I mean, the odd thing is, you look at what he does in the film, and, you know, kind of sitting there going like that. He doesn't do any of those things, but everyone came back with the same set of terms to describe the character. And I think this is part of Nick Park's genius, is that he creates characters that are much more than the sum of their parts. You know, people just got a sense of Shaun through what he did, through the little bits of heroism that he displayed in it. They kind of, everyone built their own version of what Shaun was. Yeah, and you know, so really with the series, it was a question of, okay, everyone seems to think they know who Shaun is already, so we've got to actually now find a way of taking that character forward that will fulfill people's expectations. So, I mean, in a way, if you kind of think of Shaun in that show, he was a bit like a toddler. You know, he kind of walked around, he ate things, he didn't really sort of think very much. Thought, well, we can't really, you know, make him the hero of the show. So we kind of aged him up. We said, right, Shaun is actually like a 7-8-year-old boy. He's a bit more out to do things for himself. He's a little bit more intrepid. He's got all these other sheep around him, so what's his relationship to the sheep? And well, most sheep are famous for like following, you know, sheep just kind of follow the flock. So I thought, well, Shaun's difference is he's the individual. He's the one that doesn't follow the flock. He's the one that the flock will follow. So he's the non-conformist, they're the conformists. And that kind of gives you an idea for the sorts of stories you can start to tell. You know, maybe there's a situation that sheep have to deal with. Shaun has an idea, he's kind of being dynamic, he wants to deal with it. The rest of the flock just stand there looking a bit gormless and scratching their heads and chewing the cud. And, you know, then Shaun's got to kind of rally them and get them to help him. So in a way, you know, once you've got that gut sense for what makes a character, then, you know, you can open up a series and look at the right stories that you can tell that will actually fulfill the audience's expectations of what a character is going to be.